I'm in anthropology, that's my background, and I always want to get my students doing research projects, right? And you'd think that that would be really easy, because in anthropology, the lab is all around us. You know, we just talk to people, we interview them, we hang out, deep hanging out. And so you'd think it would be relatively easy to get our students doing research to have a research-led curriculum. But, you know, we don't have to buy expensive equipment and a lab and so on, right? But in fact, it's actually pretty difficult, and it's difficult because we deal with humans, and so research has to undergo ethics review. So my project, and this comes out of my own, you know, efforts and struggles in implementing a research-led curriculum at Macquarie. So I decided I would, for this project, for this fellowship, I would go around Australia and talk to everybody who I could, and not just in anthropology. I mean, I talked to people in computing science, for example, who are doing research projects about the interface between humans and computers, right? And I wanted to know, how are you, and are you, not how are you getting your students to do human research? And if so, how are you doing that with the barrier of ethics review? Is it a barrier? And if not, then why? And it does it have something to do with ethics review? So I went all around Australia. I visited, I guess, 14 universities in every state and territory, and I talked to about 40 different people. And I started out by at first talking to, you know, the experts, the people who are really, you know, driving the research-led curriculum. And then I realized, well, that was actually pretty silly, because I wanted to know what was working and what wasn't working. What happens, you know, what about the people who aren't doing a research-led curriculum? So I changed that around. I started talking to everybody, cold calling people or cold emailing people. Can I talk to you about your research, you know, student research? And so here's what I found. You know, virtually everybody, ethics administrators and teachers, they all agree that research is great and that it really motivates and inspires students. But when it comes down to a lot of people, there are a few people who are doing it, who are luminaries, who are fantastic at making the system work for them. But there's a lot of people who aren't doing it. You know, a really typical thing I encountered was one anthropology department where I went in, and they said, oh yeah, we used to have all of our students do research projects for their honors year, but then we realized it was just too much of a hassle to deal with the ethics committee. Just, you know, it ruined everybody's projects. They were getting ethics approval, you know, 1 week before their thesis was due and so on. So we just scrapped it, and now we advise all of our students, no, you can't do original human research. How depressing, right? And this was fairly typical. One thing that was really striking is that ethics administrators would often say, oh, we're doing a great job here. Like, the teachers love us, and we've really simplified the process, and we're making it work. You know, I know, because I'm on an ethics committee, by the way, so I see this from both perspectives. I'm a deputy chair of our ethics committee, so, you know, I think we do things great. And then I hear from my colleagues who say, oh no, yeah, the ethics committee sucks. You guys are screwing everything up, right? So I heard that over and over again as I went around. And this was one of the things I did in this research project, is sort of finding these dual positions and these false ideas about what was functional and what wasn't functional, and why things were working the way they were. So one of the questions I asked everybody, ethics administrators and teachers, was, you know, do you think the ethics review of student research with humans makes the research more ethical? And here's what was really interesting. Now, a majority, I won't say the numbers because, you know, I interviewed 40 people and they weren't randomly sampled, so it's not really representative. But the majority of the people I talked to, and this includes ethics administrators, said no. They don't think the ethics review makes student research more ethical. But what they did say was, they would almost always say no, but, I think that the process of reflection, you know, as they engage with the ethics committee, is what makes research more ethical. Okay, and then there was also this false idea about what are the actual risks out there. So I would say to people, I'd say to ethics administrators especially, can you name a time that you know of, not that you have experienced yourself, that you've even heard of at any university anywhere in the world, where a student research project was unethical or placed participants at risk? And only 4, if I remember correctly, very few of the people who I talked to could actually name a time. Not even at their university, somewhere else where they'd heard a rumor about some project, right? And very often the people who said that the students had done something that was unethical, you know what was unethical? Was that they hadn't undergone ethics review. So there's like this tautological definition of ethics. So it raises really interesting questions, and I'll end here at the end of my 5-minute presentation about should we even undergo ethics review for student research? Should student research go ahead given these barriers? Thanks.